Reciting the Qur'an is going to stay in the top of your mind that Allah is speaking to you. Like literally, these are the words of Allah, and He revealed it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But who's the message for? It's not just for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but for each and every single one of us. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the excellence of the words of Allah over all other words is like the excellence of Allah over His creation. And thus, what is our go-to book? The Qur'an. Because it is the words of Allah. So the Qur'an, the excellence of the Qur'an over every single other book you could ever find in this world is like the excellence of Allah over His creation, and there is no comparison. Every single scholar and student of knowledge have always begun by studying the Qur'an. Only after finishing studying the Qur'an, they would move on to other topics. Point number one is that the Qur'an is uncreated. And therefore, realizing that the Qur'an is uncreated, how do we approach it? And again, when you're reciting the Qur'an, it's going to stay in the top of your mind that Allah is speaking to you. Like literally, these are the words of Allah, and He revealed it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But who's the message for? It's not just for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but for each and every single one of us sitting over here. So when we allow our hearts to open up to that level of intimacy, that you're sitting with the Qur'an, and it's a direct communication from Allah to you specifically, then like that your heart can open up to tadabbur and to understanding and connecting with it. They love Allah, Allah loves them. They don't care what the people say. They don't fear the blame of the critic. That's the fadl of Allah. They love His fadl upon them. They reciprocate that with gratitude. And part of reciprocating the favors of Allah with gratitude is approaching gratitude with the correct manners. With your tongue, with your limbs, with your heart. Allahu Akbar. How few are my slaves who are actually grateful. Which is why it gets filtered out. The knowledge gets filtered out. Those who are truly grateful to Allah for the knowledge coming to them, they are always thanking Him. It stays with them. Why? Because Allah said, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. You thank Allah for the knowledge that comes to you, He will increase you in knowledge. But if you cannot care less to thank Allah, if I cannot thank Allah, then that knowledge, is the opposite. We start losing it. The first point we mentioned is that the Qur'an is uncreated. And therefore our very approach to the Qur'an itself, knowing that it is uncreated, how should it be? Correct is Allah's speech. So then how are you going to recite the Qur'an knowing that it's Allah's speech? Correct. Being attentive, correct. With ihsan. So to continue, when you realize that the Qur'an is uncreated, the very fact that the Qur'an is open in front of you and you're going to recite it, it's like you're sitting in front of Allah. How are you going to do it? Back slouch, murmuring. I mean, subhanAllah, imagine this Yawm al-Qiyamah and your Lord has just come. What are you going to be doing? Sitting, mashallah. No way, no way. Imagine Jahannam is to your left and Jannah is to your right. How are you going to recite the Qur'an? You're going to try and perfect it to the best of your ability. So that's number one. The Qur'an is uncreated. Realize what it means, that you approach the Qur'an with the correct adab.
Forgive me, He said to perfect it. But if you didn't perfect it in this dunya, how are you going to perfect it there?
Subhanallah. Now does that mean that, for example, I can't lie down and recite?
You have to give it respect, but like if you are disabled or like your back is hurting or something like that.
It's a good answer. So it actually comes down to the time and the place. So for example, you'll find in the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at times he would be lying down, his head would be on the lap of his wife, and he would be reciting the Qur'an. So it's fine, you can. But when it comes to studying the Qur'an, there's a specific time you make dedicated just for the Qur'an, for tadabbur, for recitation, for revision. At that time, you're supposed to be sitting, facing the Qibla, and showing the correct adab for it. So your breath should be smelling good, you're supposed to be perfumed, you're supposed to be looking presentable, because it's the words of the Lord of the world. He's looking at you anyway. He's seeing how are you going to approach His word with the correct adab. Which is why when it comes to the classroom environment also, we say that we have to be dressing our best clothes. As a matter of fact, the best clothes that you have is the white clothes, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the best of your clothing is white. The white thobe. Make sure that you're smelling good. If you come into class and you're not smelling good, forget about the Qur'an coming to you. Nobody else will come to you also. If your breath is not smelling good, forget about the Qur'an entering your heart. The people next to you will tell you move away in their heart. They're probably making dua, Ya Allah, why is the guy sitting next to me? Tell him to go away. If that's how people will behave if you're looking, unpresentable, what about the word of the Lord of the universe? So knowing that the Qur'an is from Allah and it is uncreated, comes with it a specific adab when it comes to studying. At other times, maybe you're just going over it. Sometimes maybe I've studied a set of ayat. Maybe just before going to sleep, I'll be lying down, I'll recite it. Maybe when I'm walking, I'll recite it. Maybe, at these places you can do that to go over it. But this is specifically when it comes to studying the Qur'an, have the correct adab.